Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to Chamber Chats, as always, coming to you from the podcasting studio of Czech Television. I would like to begin, as always, by acknowledging that I live and work in the ancestral territories of the Lekwungen-speaking Coast Salish nations, in particular the Songhees and the Esquimalt, and it is our privilege and honor to live and work alongside them every day. So if you go back a year from now, we were all trying to figure out whether we were going to have Christmas or not, or what was going to happen with our holiday plans. How were we able to travel or not travel? And one of the key pins in that, of course, was the role of BC Ferries. And it's been quite a year, roller coaster up and down, if you will. Joining me now to talk about that is the president and CEO of BC Ferries, Mark Collins. Mark, thanks for your time and thanks for being here.
It's a great pleasure to be here, Bruce.
So let's go back a year, Mark. What was going on around in your world in BC Ferries a year ago from now compared to now?
Well, like so many in the population, we were trying to figure out if there would be a Christmas in the traditional sense. Would we be getting together with our families? And what did that mean for our people? You know, would people be at work on the ship? Could we have enough crew on there to carry the people that would want to travel? Would people be allowed to travel and get on the ships? What sort of services should we plan for and provide? I mean, we want to be there, for travelers. We want to help create that Christmas, but at the same time, we were faced with a lot of planning uncertainty.
Yeah, I mean, there was really no manual to get through all of this stuff, and you and your team had to figure this out on the fly, and you did a really good job at doing that. Safety, of course, has always been paramount. BC Ferries is in the transportation of people business, which means you're in the safety business all the time. So now you add the health aspect of a pandemic on top of that. Tell me what that did about the nature of your operations.
Well, we're fortunate that the safety culture is so ingrained and deep in what we do that this was like an extension. Certainly, there were a lot of new elements, that we had to build in. We had to find new ways of working. But the underlying rationale, why it's important and it's important to do it well, that was second nature to us. So we're very fortunate to lead a really dedicated team of professionals who put their arms around this challenge and said, we're going to deal with this and we're going to do it well. We're going to keep those people safe. We're going to keep each other safe so we can keep going. So very, very fortunate at BC Ferries to be part of a team with that kind of culture and that mindset. But all those new techniques had to come in. Of course, by, let's say, Christmas time rolling around, if we go back to where we were a year ago, we were getting used to masks, we were getting used to sanitization, getting used to plexiglass and things like that. But at Christmas time, we normally have a giant spike in traffic. We're saying, how are we going to adapt these new methods to a very large influx of traffic? So there was angst on the part of our team, but they just took it on very, very well. And they said, we're going to make this work so people can be with their families.
So how has the BC Ferries experience changed because of that, and how much of that is going to continue forward?
Yeah. Well, I think it's changed in some fundamental ways. We like our ferry experience to be consistent, not just we as the operator, but our customers keep saying to us, they look for regularity and consistency. When they go on the ferry, they want it to be exactly as expected. But some things are definitely changing. One of the most notable one on some of the southern routes is that there's no more buffets. The buffets are closed. And we don't know that they'll ever come back. It seems customers' preferences in the way they're receiving food in restaurants, the way they're being served has really fundamentally changed. So we have the buffet space on the southern vessels that may never be buffets again, and we have to determine what is the best way to serve our customers with that space going forward. Another thing that we're seeing is increased automation is going to come into the ferry system. Now, while this has been coming into businesses all over, many of the ways that we interact with our customers are very traditional. The vehicle toll booth, for example, and the walk up to buy the foot passenger ticket. Well, we've got our mobile point of sale operating. We may soon see BC Ferries customers receiving their ticket at the window of their car rather than going through a booth. And we're well into now studying ways to have completely touchless and frictionless travel for people. So that trend has really been accelerated by COVID because, people, they don't want to be touching common surfaces and they don't want to be up close and personal as in the past. And we need to be working in that way.
When you talk about the food service and the buffet, I think many know, but maybe many don't, that that's in place for a reason to sort of do a cost recovery because of the number of people you have to have on staff to staff the ferry. So that's why there is food service and a gift shop and all the rest of it, right?
Yeah, it's one of the enduring, if I can say, misapprehensions or misunderstandings of the ferry service, that these are costly amenities that BC Ferries has put on there purely for profit-seeking motivation. In fact, it's almost the opposite of that. We are mandated by federal regulation to have a certain number of people on board, and it's actually far more people than we need to actually run the ship. They're there to manage in an emergency, which I'm very fortunate to say it doesn't happen very often. So most of the operating day, we have far more people, a crew on board than is necessary. So help defray the costs of that crew. We put them to money-making ventures like restaurants and gift shops. And these are a benefit to the people that are traveling with us. And so that's a good thing. In fact, those amenities, rather than costing the ferry something coming, are actually keeping ticket prices low. Because if we weren't generating revenue from those activities to cover the cost of those human resources, it would all be piled on the price of your ticket. In fact, your fares would probably go up 25% if we closed all of our restaurants and gift shops.
So all the people that are there doing those jobs are actually trained in other capacities.
Absolutely. First and foremost, your ferry worker is a trained marine professional, and they're trained in life saving and they're trained in occupational first aid. That is their first and foremost job. But because that doesn't happen there all that often, there's other things that we can do. And so we have things like, our customer service staff, our cooks, and our gift shop personnel.
I want to come back to that technology piece, but when you mention revenue, which is one of the lightning rods that people always talk about when they're discussing BC Ferries. At your AGM this year, there were some graphs that came up that talked about your revenue flow and the up and down. That's not for the faint of heart because that went completely sideways. So talk about that a little bit, and what does that do to kind of put a wobble in the way you do things?
Yeah, well, COVID was an extraordinary experience for the ferry system. Normally, I know our revenue, and let's say in 2019, we were about $980 million a year. We saw a plunge of almost $200 million in 2020. And, it takes a certain amount of revenue to pay for the ferry system. I mean, ships are expensive and operations are costly. I mean, fuel alone is $130 million a year. So it does take revenue to run. If the service is to exist, revenue needs to come in. And when you cut about 20% of your revenue out in 1 year, it was really, really incredible. So at one point we were losing $1.5 million of revenue every day. And, within months we were going to be so far underwater, it was debatable whether or not the ferry system could survive financially. So it was a breathtaking time. Fortunately, as the magnitude of the impact became clear, the criticality of this became known to all levels of government. Federal and provincial teamed up to provide a support package for British Columbia and other transit agencies to help us get us through that difficult time.
And those staffing levels, too, we should point out, are things that are regulated by Transport Canada. That's why you have to have that many people. That's just different from Washington State ferries, right, where they can operate with less people.
Yeah, they have a completely different set of rules down there. We're often compared to Washington State, but the number of parallels between the two systems, other than our geography, is actually quite few. They have a completely different regime, a different way of crewing their ships, a different set of rules, a different set of ownership. For example, Washington State Ferries doesn't actually own any ships. The ships are owned by the state of Washington, and therefore Washington State Ferries doesn't have to pay for them. They get their ships for free. BC Ferries, on the other hand, we have to pay for our ships. We own the ships. We have to take out mortgages to pay for those ships, and therefore it's necessary for us to raise the money to pay the bills, just like any other business.
Okay, I want to come back to technology next. Our guest on the Chamber Chat today is BC Ferries President and CEO Mark Collins. So technology, Mark, through the pandemic, all of us through calls like this have become very close with technology in ways that we weren't before. But Ferries has been working for a number of years to inject new and innovative technology into what you do. So you talk about the ticketing experience, for example, but talk more about what's going on technically.
Well, we can think of technology as more than just the IT, although that's a very common use of the word today. People say technology and they want to know about websites and things like that. So certainly we're modernizing all of our back office systems, our point of sale systems, our reservation systems, our flexible fare systems. You may have noticed over the last year, right in the heart of COVID, we've launched a whole new category of fares called the Saver Fare, where you can travel for almost half price. Book in advance and get a free reservation. And this sort of flexibility in our booking system enables us to fill up those lesser popular sailings shifting load and peak demand away from the popular sailing times and opening more space for everyone. So that's one use of technology. But another big area that we've been really working hard on is low carbon technology. In the last, I'll say, 8 years, BC Ferries has invested more than $800 million in low carbon technology for British Columbia coastal travel, far more than any ferry system in North America, and right up there with any ferry system in the world. And this is our LNG investments, our electric propulsion investments, our underwater noise reduction investments. We're taking these steps because, we see climate change. We believe in climate change. We know we have a role in helping climate change. So $800 million is a not insubstantial investment. And I think it puts us right up there with any ferry system in the world.
You talk about $130 million a year in fuel charges. This will have impact on that too, will it not?
Yeah, I mean, the right number for fuel these days, at least fuel as we traditionally think about it, diesel fuel and fossil fuels, the right number for that is zero. So how do you get to zero? Well, there's always going to be a fuel charge, but in the future, if the fuels are hydrogen and if they are electricity, electricity is a fuel, we can get the fossil fuel component of our fuel bill to zero. And let's say replace it with the electric bill. And we're actively looking at that. And we're working very hard now to try and capture the attention of the provincial government and the federal government for an electrification project to take our 6 new hybrid vessels and turn them into fully electric ships. They're ready to be fully electric. We designed them to be fully electric. We just got to deal with the shoreside infrastructure, which simply doesn't exist today.
And they actually arrived in this region just a few weeks ago. They're kind of neat looking ships, aren't they?
Yeah, we're very excited. They're called the Island class. It's a totally new generation. It's a step change in the environmental performance of the ferry system. We now have built 6 of these identical ships. The concept there is kind of like aircraft. They're absolutely identical in every respect, so they can be moved around between routes as necessary and provide a consistent customer experience. But the real magic is, below the waterline there, where we have ultra quiet propellers, we have hybrid technology, kind of like a Prius on the water. But this Prius, we can plug in and turn off the engine completely all during the day. So that's the future we're looking for. But getting that shoreside infrastructure, Bruce, is the key thing to unlocking this. Today, if I buy fossil fuels, I don't need to own an oil refinery to get diesel fuel. But today, if I say I want to charge my ship, they expect us to do everything except own the generating station. All the wires and everything have got to be paid for by the ferry company, because we're the only people asking for that service. So I understand that rationale today, but we as a society, we need to get past that and say, how are we going to provide charging infrastructure for all the electrical uses that are out there, be it cars or trucks or trains or ferry boats, and say, how are we going to get that infrastructure in place so we can get to that electrical future, which is so important to reducing our carbon footprint.
And the noise factor, which you mentioned too, which affects the sea life.
Yeah. Noise is important.
Semi-dumb question, but I used to do that for a living. When you charge a ferry, do you plug it in, or does it go to like a charging wall, or how does that work?
Right now, the technology is plugging them in. I mean, it's a big plug, and the voltage are very high, and there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of engineering required, but it's a large plug-in. But an exciting development now, and it's really in its very early stages, is the concept of induction charging, which is not unlike the way you see, cell phones. You can lay them on a certain little spot in the car now, and they'll just charge. Or your rechargeable toothbrush at home. That's called induction charging, contactless charging. And that's coming. I foresee a day not too far away when cars will do that. You might have something built into your driveway and you just park on top of it at night. You come out in the morning and your car is charged. No need to plug in. Well, that's coming for ships as well. There are some very significant engineering hurdles to overcome, and the scaling up that technology is proving to be a challenge, but I'm sure we're going to overcome it. In 10 years, you probably won't see a plug-in ferry. You'll probably just see a ferry that charges every time it touches its dock.
Yeah, I think Transit's looking at the same thing for buses around the world. And the other point you made too is sort of about the harmonizing of the models of the ferries, that you're building them all in the same style or the same mold, if you will, or template. The example that's been used in the past is airlines who have an entire fleet of one kind of aircraft. It means that your maintenance is simpler, it's better to understand, you can interchange parts if you have to. I guess you're kind of going down that route too, aren't you?
Yeah, we are. And if you may notice that the marine industry in general is kind of last to the party here. You know, planes have been standardized almost since the day they were built because they come out of a production factory. Aircraft, buses, trucks, cars, they're all just different, models and colors of an essentially identical product. Whereas ships, you look at ships and every ship was different. It was custom. It was a custom construction. And that's really hampered us, particularly in services like ferry companies, where it is a regular, consistent service over and over again. So when you think that BC Ferries, at one point, we had 18 different classes of ships. So we have 35 ships with 18 classes, on average, only two ships in a class. And every time, you had to take one out for maintenance, for example, and you put it in another ship, odds were it was going to be completely different, and your customers would have different capacity, different decks to park on, different services on board. And I can tell you that customers were not happy about that. It's a very inconsistent service experience, and that's frustrating and uncertain for customers. Now that we're starting to get these standardized vessels in our class, and the Island class is our third class of standardized ship, we're able to change ships out for maintenance, and the customers don't even recognize that. Our goal here is the only way you can tell our ships apart is by reading the name as being the only thing different on it. And everywhere we do this, it's a huge success, and the customers are very pleased about it.
New routes are a possibility. We're going to talk about that next. Our guest on Chamber Chats today is Mark Collins, President and CEO of BC Ferries. So, Mark, there's been I believe it was a pre-feasibility study done on running a ferry service from the West Shore, from Royal Bay, into downtown, possibly with a stop at CFB Esquimalt. Where's that at right now?
Still in that stage, Bruce, pre-visibility work. We did that work, must be 3 years ago now. And the results were that show that at peak times, particularly the commuter peaks, there was a chance the service could break even in year one. And if you know anything about the economics of the ferry system, and I know you do, Bruce, breaking even in the first year of operation is actually a huge win.
Yeah.
Most ferry services lose money and need to be subsidized. And so to break even in year one was actually show that something was really, really interesting here. But I will say that passenger ferry services, passenger only ferry services in British Columbia have a very difficult history. It's been tried many times and they all fail. And so we need to understand why that is. I mean, at BC Ferries, we think we know why it is, and it has to do with the cost of operation and the volumes of people that actually use the service and what people are willing to pay. The reality is most people don't want to pay the cost of running the ferry system, and therefore it will only survive with some degree of subsidization.
Are there any other new routes that are being looked at, or do you think even just in scheming or planning stages, is there opportunity to put other routes in that would enhance the enhance the experience of using marine transit?
We have to look at routes and say what can stand alone just on its own economic merits, and there are some possibilities. I've often had conversations with Vancouver Port Authority and YVR and places like that to say, look at the waterways around the Vancouver airport and around the city of Vancouver. I mean, the city of Vancouver is on a peninsula. It's got water on three sides when you take into account the Fraser River. And, when it takes an hour and a half to drive in your car from New West to YVR on Friday afternoon, and coming down the river is about 20 minutes. It says, look, is there enough demand between those 2 points to justify running a ferry service? So there's certainly possibilities out there. We look at those, and we're looking for the ones that make the economic case that can stand on its own feet, and that's been a challenge.
And anything new, I assume, would be built on the electric model, fundamentally.
Wherever possible. I mean, that's the way forward. I mean, we're very fortunate in BC. We have this abundant and clean hydroelectricity, right? It's nice to talk about hydrogen and all of those things, but I mean, you make hydrogen using electricity. You make ammonia using electricity. Why not just use the electricity directly? We also have one of the foremost marine battery manufacturers in the world, right in Richmond, in Corvus Energy, right? So, and we have the generation, and I can tell you, BC Hydro is a first-class generator, and they are a very professional organization. They're very interested in this, and so we're very pleased to be working with them. We have all the elements to go electric here, and the marine industry is keeping up in terms of its design and its techniques of using electricity. So we think the future is electric for BC on the water.
And when we saw that heart-stopping graph of your finances over the last year, part of what you had to adjust was the I guess, the reprioritizing of capital projects, but as things get back to where they were at previous levels, you can look at that again. So what does that look like going forward? We talked about these new routes, but what else in capital expenditures?
Well, I'm pleased to say that we're getting back into our capital investment program. Again, I'll thank the federal and provincial governments for the Safe Restart Funding Program, which largely normalized our revenues. And once that was secure, and we had dealt with the immediate effects, financial effects of COVID, we were able to relook at our capital plan and say, which of these investments can we restart? We're also helped by the fact that traffic is stabilizing. Right now, we're having it's very busy out there right now, and traffic seems to have come back. It's robust, and we're getting to a stabilization of the health guidelines out there, which enables people to travel safely. So, with the future stabilizing, we're restarting many of our capital programs, and right now we've restarted our project to build perhaps as many as 6 or even 7 very large new ferries, all in the electric model. So we're very excited about that project.
Finding workforce is a challenge. It's a great career to be in the marine industry, but you're looking for people on all different levels, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Ship and shore. I agree with you, Bruce. I think it's a great career. It's certainly been a very great career for me. I've enjoyed my time. It's a very rewarding career. And one of the best things about working for a ferry company is that you work directly with communities and people. And what we do is important. We bring kids to school, and we help people get to their doctors. We take people to work, and we bring them home to their loved ones at night. And that's very rewarding. And I know people often turn to us and say, you're not doing it well enough. And we try to do it better every day. But I can tell you, as a person working within that system, it's very rewarding to work in a service that's actually important to people. We're not working for a stock price here. We're working for real people. And that's a hugely rewarding feeling to have at the end of the day. And I don't think, not every job can offer you that, but the marine business can. But you're right when you say that we need them at all levels. We need technical people on the ships. We need technical people on shore. We need customer service. We need project management. We need senior executives. These are in short supply all over the world, and we absolutely can provide rewarding careers. We've just got to get the word out there so people can take a look at us.
Mark Collins, President and CEO of BC Ferries. You're a busy guy. We appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being with us today. Chamber Chats.
My pleasure, Bruce. And thank you for your interest.
Thanks, Mark. Chamber Chats, of course, is made possible through the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you next time for another Chamber Chat.